or there might just be just a scattering of houses. But there's usually one or two people that really know that area, that kind of know everyone, know how to talk to everyone. But they may have parking issues and things like that that would be of concerns to them with any trail. And the first thing is, do they know trails down there that they would like to have open, at least on a community level? Some of these things don't have to, just because it says the word public, it doesn't mean necessarily that it reaches out and it ends up on every map and all those kinds of things.
That's very important, because some places are not so appropriate for widespread public use, but that doesn't mean they should just fall into being overgrown and forgotten.
Right.
So you need to find the right use in the right times,
And what that can do is it can really create, going back to this community concept, it can create a way for people, to work together on something that they all can benefit from, but also a way for them to meet and see each other. And I live up in Kula. The best example, and I know a lot of people know it because other people drive from other places, is Thompson Road. The reason people walk on it is it happens to be a fairly safe road.
Yeah.
And there also happens to be a really great coffee shop at the end of the road.
That's right.
So on Sunday mornings and whatever, but it's a place where you can leisurely talk to folks that you run into along the way, those kinds of things, other than Costco.
Yeah. Well, people walk on our road out in Huelo, but it's people from the neighborhood. And, part of that is it's not like anyone is excluded, but people from the neighborhood, they kind of understand the protocol of the road, that where you stop, where you don't stop, do you feed the horses, do you not feed the horses? Whereas people come in from outside and it's like Disneyland to them. It's like, oh, here's the country, and I'll just do this and I'll just do that. So there needs to be a way of sort of integrating the proper protocol for an area into people's visits.
Like you just said, it'll be different for each and every place. So one of the things that PATH could potentially become is we could say, hey, we have some resources here that you can use. Like if you need to talk to the county about how to find that trail or to make sure it actually was a public easement, those kinds of things. We have some of the tools in-house to help you with that. We can also help you facilitate those conversations. But you guys go on your local level and you manage that trail. And so if you think about it in terms of a spoke, we could be a very small amount of people with some really good resources, and reaching back out or assisting others who come into that spoke looking for information. Mm-hmm. And to me, what's nice about that is that the community deals with the trail at its level as a starting point, which to me I think is a very important thing.
Yeah, I think it's important to have people who live in the area make those decisions, because they understand the hazards, and also, there may be, for instance, some trails have cultural sites and other things that are very sensitive, and you wouldn't want them put in a guidebook, but they might be perfect, to have the Cub Scouts out or the Boy Scouts out every once in a while to help clear the trail. There's just levels of use that we're not like the good old days where just our society, like nobody had a car and everybody walked, and so everybody sort of had to, once again, follow a certain protocol.
Right.
Now we just have people that live in many different layers of their personal reality, and so you need to make it so that you're taking care of things that are part of your community.
Let me give you one quick example, which goes back to Maui Coastal Land Trust, and that is they have the Waihe'i property, wonderful place.
Yeah.
And Scott Fisher, who's the program manager down there, or was for years, he can tell you stories about, it's an innocent enough thing. You take your dog for a walk.
That's right.
But they happen to have a lot of shorebirds.
Very rare endangered birds.
Who just have no defense mechanism to dogs. And one dog off the leash for just a few moments can totally ruin a colony. So that's an example where it's not that the person intended to do anything wrong,
right,
but there's got to be a learning curve.
Yeah.
I want to also mention that we, despite the fact that we have an enormous amount of state and federal lands, public lands, when you think about it, especially here on Maui, we don't have that many trails. So we would like to...
not compared to other islands.
Yes, and so we ultimately would like to, identify spots where there either was an old trail or where there's an opportunity for a trail, and start working with the state, for example, opening up new places, because we certainly could use more of them.
All these things are so needed. Now, we're looking forward to seeing your presentation. You have a presentation about your most recent project, the one that Path has really been committed to the last, year and a half?
It's been a few years now.
Yeah.
And that is Haleakala Trail.
Do you want to bring up the slides yet? Or?
Yeah, let me just first tell you, just
intro?
real quickly, Dave, once again, this was something that's been near and dear to David Brown's heart for quite some time. He's been working on this issue really for over a decade through Na'ala. And this is a project that to a certain degree the state, and I'll be identifying that, the state has also been involved in. And once again, to reiterate, we are very much interested in working on trails that are already on public lands or that have already been known to be public. And that certainly is
the documentation's there.
Correct. And that's certainly the way we feel about Haleakala Trail. A portion of it does go across Haleakala Ranch, and they're currently disputing the publicness of the trail, so to speak. But we'll get into just talking a little bit about the history. So when Dave brought this originally to me, it was certainly an interesting trail, but what we found, this was a little bit like a treasure trove in terms of...
Wow, you're taking us through the whole discovery process here?
I'll just give you one part that's just very exciting. Dave was doing some of his early research, and he just happened to be down at the library. It just shows you what can happen when you're at the library looking through different archives and that kind of thing, and he found a 1905 newspaper article that I'll show at the end of this slide presentation. And it says, I'm summarizing, but it says, come one and come all to visit one of the grandest sites in all the world. And this is how you get there. And it talks about the fact that the trail had just been improved so that people could come up to the top of the crater.
And this is the same trail that you're advocating for now.
Right. This is what's in some cases been called Haleakala Bridle Trail because it was used quite often by horse riders going up, or just Haleakala Trail. From that one, we started doing the research. We took that 1905 article, and we said, let's do some research right around 1904 and 1905 and see what we find. And so our researchers went over to the archives, the state archives in Oahu, and we found, to me, just an unbelievable treasure trove of old documents. It turns out that the writers back then, between the boards and the various people involved in these things, were quite prolific in their writing. And there's a really good record. So I'll show a few of those documents along the way.
Wow. So this has been quite a research project here.
It has been, and a very interesting one.
Did you find things that really surprised even, the knowledge that you had that really just kind of went, wow.
Absolutely.
That opens a new door.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just to have it so well documented was the part that just was so surprising. And that's what makes this trail, I think, particularly unique. There may be other trails out there that were public, but they certainly didn't have it. One of the things that we'll see as we go through this is I found out that this was the livelihood. This trail was the way that Maui was promoting itself, and that business folks were encouraging tourists at that point in time on steamers in the late 1800s to come to Hawaii.
To hike this trail.
Right. Well, and of course, what they were interested
in, or ride the trail.
What they're interested in is the site at the top, which is Haleakala Crater.
Right.
But at that point in time,
was it the only way to get there at that time?
It was certainly the only easy way to get there. There was always an overland route that is an ancient route that was used by Hawaiians going from the North Shore up through Olinda, and I'll show a map of that in a moment, and it went through the crater into Kaupo. So that was their overland route to get there, and I'm guessing that from the research I've done that was used either just as a quick route or also when it was heavy seas and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So as is often the case, a native type of trail, a local trail, becomes the way that you go. That becomes the way, and it becomes the road. And
so it was the traditional trail first.
Right, and in fact, when the national park was in the process of coming into existence in the early 30s, that was they initially said, let's make the trail the road. That's what all the documents show. And ultimately, the engineers said, this is a little too steep because the federal engineers have really, if you've ever been to a federal park, they always have these really beautiful highways. And so
there's a certain grade percentage that you have to maintain.
And so we have the road that you see today, which is a much more undulating but a lesser grade.
Well, we should start pulling up some slides.
All right, let's do it.
Our time is flying here.
All right.
Yeah. So crew, can we pull up the slides and see? Oh, look at that.
Okay.
All right.
So first, let's start off with a few pictures.
Yes.
This-
So tell people where we are. We've gotten to what, the top of
Right,
Olinda
so
Road?
the trail goes from, the trail originally started at St. Joseph's Church, right, the Catholic church right outside of Makawao town. And it continued from there up roughly what is now Pi'iholo Road. But at the time, that was called Haleakala Road. And then
And that was a narrow dirt,
it was a narrow dirt
like
road,
track
exactly.
for horses and carts. Was it wide enough for a cart at that
It
time?
would have been probably wide enough, for, at least in the late 1800s, it was wide enough for a cart and for the Model Ts that were coming to Maui. So then from that, it continued up through Haleakala Ranch lands, and I'll actually show a map here in just a second and give a better.
What are we seeing here? Which
so
part
here
of the trail
we're
is
actually looking down from about the 6,000 foot mark on Haleakala, on the Haleakala Crater Road. So we're looking down off of Crater Road, where this is. You can actually see this right here. So let me just step back and just say that the 1905 article said this contractor has put in rock cairns, or ahu, which are these right here at the bottom, and what they called in this 1905 article finger posts. And you can see because it's pointing the way. It didn't necessarily say anything, but it was pointing the way. And so this...
You were supposed to know what it meant.
Right. It says, hey, go this direction. Of course, it gets foggy up there, so these were needed. And they put this ahu and a finger post every 1/5 of a mile. So one of the other surprising things was when we went on our discovery visit with the ranch and with the state, we found, as the ranch had known, of course, for some time, that these finger posts and the ahu are still there, which is really an amazing thing. So not
100 years.
Not only do we have an ancient trail, but we still have the artifacts, the historical artifacts up from it. So let's see if I can get things to work here.
Go to the next slide.
Oh, excuse me, I see what I'm doing here. Okay, here's another picture a little bit further down the trail, and you can see that it lays quite beautifully. So one of the things we have found is that in 1904 and 05, when the work was being done to revitalize the trail and make it better for tourists to get up, is they made it a nicer path. And so,
so by nicer, would that be smoother, wider?
Smoother and wider, exactly. Not such a challenging, steep topography.
So help me here. Is there a path in that picture?
Yes. So what I want to show is, in this picture right here, you can see a finger post in the foreground.
Yeah.
And then across the gulch, you can see another finger post here, if you can see the cursor.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
And then a little bit further on right here is another one right here at the very top. So there's 3 in a row. And those are roughly every 1/5 of a mile, although they may have put them a little bit more close than that in some cases. This is just another one that shows this is where the finger post is lying down on the left. You can still see the ahu, and of course you can see this beautiful terrain.
Yeah, looks like very nice rolling land.
This right here, these red dots are, we had a surveyor go out and identify, with the assistance of the ranch, all of the ahu that we could find along this path. So let me orient you. Right here is your north-south indicator, and you can see this is pointing north. So at the bottom of the screen is pointing towards the ocean, okay?
Okay.
And as you look up, you're heading up. So if you can see my cursor right down here at the bottom, this is where Olinda Road comes out. And the trail, there's actually still the road right here, and it still shows on a lot of maps, as it did for many, many years. That comes up here until you get to the first ahu. So some of them may have been lost here at the bottom, we're not sure. But once you get here, you can see that there's over, I believe, my count is over 30 ahu that are still in existence. So these are
quite
all
a pronounced
been surveyed in.
pattern there.
What you can see is this is the path that is now used to get to the top, the highway, the Crater Highway. So here's that flat part that everyone knows, especially if you're a biker, you know this one quite well.
You look forward to it.
That's right. And the flat part actually happens right along in here. And then it starts to rise a little bit more, and there you can see the trail. And then this is where it takes the bend, and there used to be a whole bunch of pine trees right here. You kind of get in a pine forest. You come around the corner, and you enter the park.
Yes.
So that's the orientation. Now what would have happened is the trail would have continued on up through here, and we know from looking at the maps and things like that, that it ended up basically at Halimau,